Hey, Rollins. Very nice to see you. Thank you.
At the risk of sounding completely fake to you, but this is true. I've been looking forward to this show for quite a long time. This show was booked a long time ago, several months, and it's been a long time since I've been to Poland, and I have no good excuse for why. In that, the first time I was here, Katowice, in the 90s, I did some big metal festival, and I had a really good time. And I figured, well, this will be a good place to come back every year on tour. But somehow, unfortunately, somehow, I couldn't make that happen. In that there's never another offer to come to Poland. And I just figured I must have pissed someone off. I don't know. And so anyway, it took me quite a while to get back here. And so it's nice to be in front of you. It's nice to be... There is at least part of the reason that you're here at this festival is because you dig music. And obviously people come to festivals for all kinds of reasons. It's a way to meet other people. It's a way to check out the girls, check out the guys, whatever it is that you're into. Well, why not? They're alive. Do it. But obsessively, it's probably about the music is the main thing that brought you here. And that being the case, I think, and forgive me if some of my ideas are a bit utopian and hopelessly naive. Forgive me for being like a 5-year-old as I stand here in my 51-year-old frame. But it is my opinion that music people who like music, people who love music, they are reasonable. That is to say, you and I might have many disagreements, and that's fantastic. It keeps the blood thin and makes life interesting. However, the fact that we all love music, and we're all here pretty much for all the bands, obviously, it says to me that you and I are reasonable enough to where if we have any major conflict, we can resolve it without fists, without weapons of any kind. We can go, okay, we agree to disagree. Why? Because we have a central idea that we like the music. And while we may disagree on some things, the fact that we like the music, to me, eclipses our disagreements and our differences. And that's why I feel very safe amongst music people, because I reckon we're all kind of on the same page to a greater extent than a lesser extent. A long time ago in Washington, D.C., I was born in 1961, which is for many of you ancient history, fair enough. And so I lived in small apartment buildings in the Washington, D.C. area with my mother. My mother and father were divorced. And so my mother could afford small apartments, and I was in a small room at these different apartments we hopped around in. And at a very early age, she bought me my first record player. It was actually the last record player she bought me. My next one I bought myself. But anyway, she bought me a small record player. And to my mom's credit, she loved music and theater and literature. And so our little apartment, no TV. We had lots of books, and we had lots of music, and that was the deal. And my mother... She used to go see John Coltrane, she used to go gig Miles Davis live, and she turned me on to a lot of good music. And she used to buy me records every once in a while. If I really liked the music she was listening to, she'd just give me the record and she'd go buy another one. Or sometimes she'd say, well, I'm going to buy the kid a record. And you may laugh at some of this, but so be it. She bought me Beatles records. This is when they were still making... remember, this is back in the days when they were still making records. That's how old I am. Me and Abraham Lincoln were listening to these records. Okay. So, I would take these records and listen to them over and over again. And it was my impression, something about this high, while America is embroiled in the Vietnam War, and everything was very hostile, including my father. I would listen to these Beatles records, and it was my opinion that the Beatles, they wrote records for kids. And I thought these were children's songs. And they seemed friendly, and they were cool, and there was interesting drawings, they had long hair, and they weren't intense looking like my dad. And the more I listened to these records and this music, I thought the Beatles were the dads I never had. They seemed like they'd be friendlier than my dad, who was a champion racist. an amazing homophobe and a record-breaking misogynist. So he hated people who did not have his bone white skin color. He hated homosexual people, and he hated women. And I would drive around the Washington, D.C. area with him in the court-appointed agreements weekend visit with dad. So saith the divorce court judge. And I drive around this massive American piece of steel with my father, as he would have always the cold can of beer cooling his nutsack. And we drive around Washington, D.C., and he would tell me that women are stupid. And my mother's a woman. He said, look, she's your mother. I want you to respect her, but she's a woman, so you don't have to take her too seriously. Which is an incredibly mixed message, especially when you're like 5 years old. And the only thing, the information you derive from that equation is, wow, adults can be assholes. And my dad was one. And so, it is a breakthrough revelation when at a young age you're like, wow, what an asshole. I came from this somehow. And so at red lights, like an American football player before the snap, the quarterback, he looks from side to side. So is my father looking for cops. And if there's no cops, put the beer, hey you. Yes, Dad? Don't trust Chinese people. Got it. I'm 5, you're ruining my life. And so, the more and more life went on, the more and more records I got, the more and more of an ear I acquired for music, thanks to my mom, who turned me on to Brahms and Chopin, Miles Davis, and Miriam Makeba, the great African singer who sadly passed away a few years ago. You should check her music out. She was so mighty in the face of apartheid that they kicked her out of South Africa. And by the end of her life, she had like 9 or 10 different passports, because other countries kept adopting her and said, you are Mother Africa, you can be an American. You're Mother Africa, you can be from France. Because she stood up to apartheid, and South Africa said, whoa, a powerful black woman standing up to a bunch of bullshit white guys? Ah, you have to go. Anyway, this was the music that I would listen to. And as the years would go on, I'd spend more and more time in my room with my records, perhaps like some of you, perhaps a little introspective, not able to run as fast as all the other people. At least the Beatles and all those records would not judge me. And so as the years go on, I find myself in this very intense public school in Washington, D.C. We're all like 5 or 6 of the white kids in school. The rest are black. And this is a very, very intense time in America. You know, America's boiling. Vietnam War, Civil Rights Movement, Black Panthers. It's a very intense time to be an American, especially in Washington, D.C. And so I'm going to this school, and I'm outnumbered by black kids, and that's when I learned about racism. These kids came up to me, they called me a cracker. I didn't understand that. I found out later it was a white cracker. And then I was called a Bama, and I still don't know what that means. But I was hit in the face. And all of you, some of you have been hit in the face, and it's awful. But when you're really little and someone hits you in the face, it's not even the pain that's the problem, because it doesn't hurt. You're so numb from terror. It's the invasion of your space, that someone can walk up and just smack you. It's a terrifying thing. And this would happen to me all the time. Yet at the same time, some of these kids would bring what was called a close-and-play record player. Literally, it's like, it sounds horrible. It's a bad-sounding machine. But you would close the record player on top of a 45, and the needle would come down, and it would play a 45. And so one kid had this. He'd bring it to school. It's battery-operated. And everyone else had Jackson 5 singles, that classic Motown label. And they'd put on like ABC and all those great songs on the little close-and-play, and kids would pick up a jump rope and pretend it was a microphone, and they'd sing along. And I love this music. There's nothing wrong I can find with a Jackson 5 single to this day. It is as good as it gets. And so in 1960, whatever, I'm checking it out. In 2012, you can still get me going with that music. And so I like the music, yet they're hitting me. And I did not understand, like, we like the same music, what possibly could be our problem? And so thankfully, my mother straightened me out. I go, Mom, why are the kids calling me a Bama and hitting me and kicking my ass? And then she said, honey, it's a very tough time in America. Be patient. I go, what do I do when you're mean to me? She said, you stick your hand out and you say, hi, I'm Henry, I want to be friends. I said, what if they hit me and I'm crying? And she told me the best lie of all the lies she told me growing up. She said, don't worry, if you smile, no one will know you're crying. And I tried it. You make it all the time. Ah, white boys crying. And And somewhere around age 9 or thereabouts, there was a public school feeding system for kids. They would bring in like 50 bag lunches for the kids who could not afford a lunch. And so the kids would line up, and they'd get this kind of dripping peanut butter sandwich and a brown banana, or something like that. So one day the kids line up, and there's one more kid than there are lunches. So the line comes to an end. There's 2 kids in line. The last guy gets the lunch. The guy behind him, he's got no lunch. This kid takes a pencil out of his pocket, takes the pencil, and shoves it through the hand of the kid ahead of him and took the lunch. We all stood there and looked at this pencil right through the guy's hand. It looked like a movie prop. It did not look real. It wasn't kind of sort of in the hand. It was cleanly bisecting the hand. And I'll never forget this as long as I live. It did not bleed. And he stood there screaming in complete terror at the mutilation of his hand. He's like, ah, ah, because it's an awful thing to see. And the rest of us were like, it was terrifying. And finally the teachers came and dragged him away, and I guess the kid lived to fight another day. And so I became like my fellow students, where I learned how to fight. I learned how to fight back. It wasn't the best way to be socialized, but that's what I learned. And so eventually I got so intense on all of that they threw me out of the Washington, D.C. public school system, and they sent me to a suburban school where the teachers are very nice, and you can call them by their first name. And all of the students around me have a private school education, and they're very, very educated. I'm woefully behind them, and so they're very, very fleet of foot. They're intellectually agile, and I'm flat-footed, and I can't hang out with them. And so one day, around 5th grade, there's a kid who beat me out for a touchdown. We're running on a muddy field, I touch football, he's running, and I lunge to tag him. He keeps accelerating. I go face first into a bunch of mud. Shirt covered in mud, face covered in mud. I stand up, it looks like a movie, and everyone's laughing at me. Yay, there's Henry with a bunch of mud. I was so mad and so humiliated by that guy, I reacted in the one way I knew how. I walked up to him, I pulled a pencil out of my pocket, and I shoved it into the back of his leg as hard as I could, and I sunk it into the back of his leg. And I don't know why that's funny to you. I am owed a pencil in the ass from a kid named Tim, who's my age. He's 50-something as well. And one day I'm going to be walking down the street, and some aging adult's going to walk and I'm going to go, ah! Were you in it? Yeah! I've been looking for you! And so, more and more, I was becoming a product of my environment, but more and more the music was all I could understand. I liked people on records. I could handle someone on a record. Mary McCabe would sing to me. I liked it. Dionne Warwick would sing to me. I liked it. Gladys Knight and the Pips would sing to me. I liked them. Gladys Knight was my other mother. And so I liked these voices because they were not threatening to me. And so at that school, understandably, you stab a kid with a pencil, they throw you out. So they put me into a school where I'm supposed to learn my lesson. And they put me into a school where the teachers can basically stand you up and punch your lights out. From 6th grade until graduation, I stood in a ridiculous prep boy uniform with ex-soldiers from World War II, Vietnam, and Korea yelling at me. They were my instructors, picking me up, yelling at me, spitting in my face. You call this an essay? This essay stuff, you were good. And if you're kind of a rebellious young guy, you don't like this too much. And so I wasn't a good student. I was like some of you. I didn't like school. School didn't like me. I went deeper and deeper into the music. One day I'm on the school bus. We're going to school. It's a long. I live in the city. This school's way out in the suburbs. It's a long trip. And so I'm in the back of the bus with this other loser named George. George had bad skin and bad thick glasses, and no one liked him, no one liked me. So we were like 2 peas in a pod no one wanted to look at. And he always had this little tape recorder with 1 speaker. I don't even know if they make them anymore. And they don't sound so good, but it's better than nothing. And he would bring in his tape recorder, powered by those big batteries that you can wound a dog with if you throw them at him. And he would always have some music. And so one day, we're back in the back of the bus, he pops in this factory-made white cassette with black lettering. He pops it in, and he hits the play button. And this music comes out that is so savage, so violent, so brutal. Everything in my world stopped. And I'm listening to this guitar. I never knew a guitar could do that. And then the singer starts singing, and he sounds like a freaking lunatic. He can't hold a note, but I can hear every single word he says. And he's not trying to be melodic. He's just telling me the story about a guy who tried to like people, and people didn't like him. So he went out for a while, and he came back to the city he was born and raised in, and he killed everyone in it. I'm like, damn, I want to do that like every day. And what is this? And he said, this is the Paranoid album by Black Sabbath. My life has never been the same. And so I got a little older, and you get 15 or 16, you want to go see a band play. And again, I'm ancient, so forgive me. And so I would go see the bands that were available to me, which was the local hockey arena that also had the basketball games in there, and I could watch bands from 1.5 miles away. And so you've heard of a band called Fugazi, I'm sure. Which means you've heard of a guy named Ian Mackay. Okay. Ian Mackay is 50 years of age. I'm 51. He and I have been best friends since he was 11 and I was 12. We've done everything together. And so we used to go see music shows. And from 1.5 miles away, we saw Aerosmith. We saw Van Halen. We saw Ted Nugent. We saw Golden Earring, who has one song apparently, called Radar Love. And they would remind you by playing it at the beginning and the end of the set, just so you know, oh, got it. And so we would leave the arena with the music ringing in our ears, reeking of cheap arena weed. And the high point of all those visits to the arena, watching bands from a city-state away, was getting to see Led Zeppelin. And one of the most informative parts of seeing that show, which was as good as I hoped it would be, they opened with Kashmir. Forget it. 3.5-hour show. They could have played 10.5. No one would have left. The guy sitting next to me was passed out with his face on his leg. And he wasn't hearing Led Zeppelin. I mean, we're watching Led Zeppelin. It was incredible. There's a guy next to me and Ian asleep. And we looked at this guy. He was high on something. And we said to ourselves, we're never going to be like that. We're going to be awake for life. We're not like that. That guy is never going to get that night back. And so now I'm buying more records. Now I got a job, whatever job I could get, I did it. Through newspapers, worked at a movie theater, toured tickets. I would take that money, I'd go buy records whenever I could. So music was cool. It was my life, more and more, because I liked the music more than I could deal with people at school. Chicks were always hard to meet, because that's a weird relationship when you're a weird, skinny boy from a private school who never gets to interact with any. And so I liked the records more and more. But the thing that turned everything around for me was something called punk rock. And so punk rock happened, and all of a sudden I'm buying punk rock records. And all of a sudden there was records that were as angry as I was. And I heard the first Clash album. I heard Joe Strummer. He taught me. Joe Strummer taught me to question authority. I heard Joe Strummer and he said, you got to question authority. I never would have thought of that by myself. In that, I just never would have had the guts to stand up to authority. It was Joe Strummer who gave me that courage. I heard Johnny Lydon. I heard the Sex Pistols. I'd never heard someone more angry in my life besides me. And so I said, finally, my ship has arrived. And so Ian and I started going to see these shows when they came to town. We saw a band from Ohio who moved to New York. They would play in Washington, D.C. all the time. They're called The Cramps. And the singer, Lux Interior, about this high. It's like 6'1" of weird white amphibian salamander-like man. And we would see him play in clubs the size of your living room. And within 3 songs, Lux Interior was always down to his underwear, off stage, and you'd always find me and Ian to ride on. And all of a sudden, there's like this 6.5-foot long and mostly nude man dry humping your head. And his skin was cold and wet and smooth. I'll never forget it. Like, his balls are touching my face! I mean, it was just like, so, and you'd throw him back on stage, he'd have the microphone in his mouth, he'd be dry humping. Some of the best nights of my life. And so as a young person, that's how I got up close and personal to rock music. I had Dee Dee Ramone. The sweat would come off his nose like a faucet. And I'd stand there, and you're like, thank, it's the only moisture I'm getting the whole night. And so I go see The Damned and the Bad Brains in 1979. I'm right up front, of course. And Dave Vanian, the amazing vocalist, he sees my young cranium. And he says, I better keep time to this song with a microphone on this kid's fat head. Well, and I'm just there getting my ass beaten by Dave Vanian. I probably still have the knots on my head. It's probably why I think the way I do. I couldn't thank him enough. Anyway, and so this is what informs me. It was punk rock that actualized a lot of things. It politicized me, besides going to school and getting beaten up. And so it was punk rock that instructs me. Punk rock is one of the reasons why I conduct myself the way I do. And one of the main ethics that I derived or got from punk rock is that there's no difference between me on stage and you in the audience. Basically, we are all in this together. Now, we're not all that to each other all the time. We're not always looking to give each other a hug, especially in traffic. But by and large, for better or for worse, we're all stuck here together. And so that's what punk rock instructs me, that we're kind of all here. And anything that comes out of a microphone from a stage, it's all folk music, music for folks. This is folk music without a band, in my opinion. And so, with that, when people reach out to me, I don't pretend like I don't hear it. Like, I go to the store, I buy my own food when I'm off the road. I go to the grocery store, someone says, hey, Henry, I don't say, oh, I don't talk to the riffraff. I go, yeah, what? I mean, what, I'm not going to talk to you, I didn't hear you? And so people have been writing me letters for many years from all over the world. And back in the old days, it was snail mail, as they call it, and now it's the internet. And so I try and answer the mail as best I can, not thinking that I'm anything special. But the idea that someone reaches out to me, I'm not going to nullify that person's voice by just hitting delete. And like, what, you can't hear me? It infuriates me. You know, that when I write someone and they don't write me back. You know, like what, I'm not here? I can't do that to someone else. It just doesn't strike me as the cool and punk rock thing to do. And so when I get letters, I do my best to answer them. And so I told you all that basically to tell you this. A few months ago, I got a very interesting letter from an American girl somewhere in America. Her name and location, let's just keep it anonymous. She sends me a letter, and in her letter, she sends me 5 or 6 JPEGs of her naked body. Now, I didn't tell you this to impress you. I didn't tell you this to like, wow, at 51, he's still got it. No. We've all been around the block a few times. It's not that impressive to anybody at this point, knowing what we know. But anyway, in her letter, she did not say, hey, Big Daddy, this is me with no clothes on. Come and find me. She said something quite different. She said, Dear Henry, I'm a virgin, and I want you to look me over and tell me if you think a boy would ever like me. And the idea that this young girl is basically sticking her jaw out, that's a very vulnerable position to be in. Here's my nakedness. Do you think, not do you, will you like me, do you think a boy will like me? Now, you can derive from this any conclusion that you will. My conclusion was, she's got no one in her corner. There's no one she can trust. There's no mom, there's no sister, there's no friend or confidant that she can say, hey, how does all this work? Because as you know, when you're young and your body's going through incredible physiological changes minute to minute, it's like being schizophrenic. You wake up every day, new person, new attitude, a lot of questions, a lot of curiosity, especially about all that hormonal stuff. Why wouldn't you be curious? It's only the thing that drives you down the road. And so it says to me that this girl's got no one on her side where she lives. So she's reaching out to this weird, ancient man from the 80s. Some obscure 51-year-old punk rock relic. And so I write her back immediately. I said, my dear, rule number 1. Never send photos of your nakedness to anyone on the internet. Facebook has an awful amount of permanence and perpetuity in this world, and you do not want these photos of your nakedness haunting and humiliating you for the rest of your day. Item 2. If you were to send photos of your nakedness to any one man on the information highway, my dear, you have sent them to the right guy. Because I have deleted all of them to the best of my ability, and I advise you do the same, lest your hard drive fall into enemy hands. And so as to your main query, my dear, will a boy like you? Now, this is not an evaluation or judgment as to her physical attributes. We're all semi-grown up here. It is a female human sans clothes. I think you know what it looks like. The parts are where you think they're going to be, and they look approximately like yours or the one that you desire. And that it is what it is, and that's what was in the photos. So it's not a judgment on what she looks like, but nonetheless I said this. I said, my dear, as to your main query, will a boy like you? In the next 5 or 15 months, you are going to get not only interest from boys, but also men, girls, and women. In the next year, you're going to acquire 5 to 50 hours of phone messages left on your cell phone from emo boys whose great affections you have deflected with your great indifference. Emo boys will run through moonlit cornfields screaming your name to the heavens. Emo boys will urgently dry hump the outside of your house as they look longingly in through the living room, into the living room space, to the couch, the family couch, where no doubt your vulva has been parked at one point. They want to take these cushions and hug them to their chest and never let them go. So, all of that adoration, desire, and attention is going to come your way. What you need to stop doing immediately is tossing yourself off like some odd chunk of meat on the auction block of the internet. Because if you start devaluing yourself, the first date you have is going to be the last date you'll have. Because you're going to meet a guy on the internet who says he's 17. He's my age. He's going to get you to meet him at a donut place 40 miles from your home on some obscure bit of highway. Your first and last sexual encounter will not be pleasurable or memorable because he's going to rape and kill you, chop you into pieces, and the next day, the highway patrol will pick up your decimated body in a few plastic bags. Now, do you want to have that be your future? Well, do ya? Now, you might be saying to yourself, Henry, how dare you write such an overwhelmingly authoritarian letter to this young person? Who the hell do you think you are? Well, I got an answer for that. At this station of my life, at 51 years of age, I fancy myself like Zarathustra, coming down in spring from mountain high, long flowing white beard, massive staff in hand, preaching stentorian from the mount. I am ancient and wizened. I have spoken. Send. And so I sent this to her. And so she writes me back. She writes me back a couple of days later, like after the shock wears off, and she went, wow, that was intense. What the hell was I thinking? I guess I needed that. I said, what were you thinking? No harm, no foul, my dear. You're thinking like a young person. You got a lot of questions, and that's okay. You got to be safe in this life. You got to be real smart, and you got to be real tough. You got to be smarter than tougher. So work on both of those. And my dear, your self-esteem and your self-respect, those are very, very important. Don't sell out to any guy. You need an erection. Trust me, there's so many of those in the world. Don't worry about it. And it was an interesting thing in that she did not write me and say, hey, what's sex like? In that she can go to the internet and find high-resolution MPEGs of that right now, any proclivity she desires. She asked me an analog question in a digital world. Do you think a boy will like me? With all the interconnectedness that we enjoy with the internet, which I think is great. I use it every day. I think there's also a resultant disconnectedness in that there's a lot of people with an analog query. Will a boy like me? I would hate to think what Google would say to you if you put that into its search engine. Some Viagra ad will come back, or some crass, demeaning thing would come back at you. And the reason I tell you that is because right now you are surrounded by people you might know or not know, and they are from the same stripe. They are from the same way of thinking, not conformist, but here for the music, digging the music. All the people that you're surrounded by, in my opinion, and this is a bit slathered in patchouli oil, hopelessly naive and utopian, but these are the fellows and fellowettes that you are going to be changing the world with. And it's up to you and me to be forward-thinking, scientifically inclined, and really looking to make a great change in this century. In that the world has some problems. I think things, by and large, are getting better. Yes, America causes some trouble in the world. Yes, you read some headlines of Americans eating bath salts and turning into zombified face-eating freaks. Like some of you find it welcome diversion from usual American front pages. Obama's a Muslim. Obama's from Africa. Obama's bad. He shipped 80 gazillion jobs overseas, and he gives away $90 billion every golf game to all his lackey friends. None of this is true. I think a lot of my countrymen and countrywomen can't stand the fact that the new president has every single word in Webster's dictionary in the front of his brain pan and can use them anytime he wants. And he's nothing like the last guy. Now, I'm sure it is not for me to tell you how you are, but I bet for Perhaps some of you, English is not your first language. Perhaps you picked up English at school, from rock and roll, television. Somehow you gleaned enough English, and you're understanding me pretty well. And so, obviously, over 8 years, you no doubt saw a little bit of George W. Bush on the television. And you wondered, you're like, well, wait a minute, English is my third language. I speak it pretty well. Took me 20 minutes to learn it. What's his problem? And it was always... why does he get cross-eyed with polysyllabic words? Why is it always Bush v. English or Bush contra English? Why does this man stagger through the English language like a drunken frat boy trying to find his way home? He runs America? And then the new guy comes in, who's like the James Bond of American presidents. He's sleek, he's cool, he can hit the three-point shot with 0 seconds on the clock. He's 51 and has a 30-inch waistline. Damn! And he's so incredibly cool under pressure.
Now he's black and he's a Muslim and he doesn't know anything. And
he's like, to be clear, that's all a bunch of crap. I think he's fantastic. And so, it is my opinion that when you see change like that in a big-ass country like America, that change is possible. But change will not happen unless cool, scientifically inclined, brave people stand up with very vocal power and a lot of charisma and a lot of bravery, stand up to multinational corporations, stand up to these stupid wars who keep happening. And like, that would be you. And that would be me, and that's going to happen in this century, because you and I, we are music people, and we're going forward. And that sounds a little kumbaya, but I not only believe in that, I depend on that. And here's something that happened last year is going to happen to you one day. Just keep waking up every day, and don't get hit by a bus, and this will happen to you. I turned 50 last year, which is no big deal, in that it's the year between 49 and 51. And so, it happened. And it happened in New York City. And I was doing a long week of shows there at a really cool place, and I had about 15 more minutes left as a 49-year-old. I left the venue, it was about 11:45 at night on February 12th, Abraham Lincoln's birthday, and I walk across the freezing streets of New York, and I sit down in a diner. I got about 12 more minutes on the clock left as a 49-year-old before I hit the big 5-0, and I asked the nice lady for a tuna fish sandwich and a cup of coffee, and she goes away, and she comes back right when the clock strikes midnight. She puts the sandwich down. The first thing I said to myself as a 50-year-old was, you turn 50 and they give you a tuna fish sandwich. That was the first thing I thought. And as I was thinking there, I was thinking about my life. I was sitting there going, well, at 50, it is now time for me to figure out what it all means. Now that I'm at the 50-yard line of my life, which is not really true. The average American human lifespan for a male is like 78.1 or 78.3 years. So I am not at the 50-yard line of my life. I'm in field goal range of death. As far as like the mountaintop, oh, that's like 20 years ago. Oh, I've been to the mountaintop, and now I'm going down the other side. Oh, look, there's a grave down there, and there's nothing I can do about it except party all the way down to the end and stick it to the man. So as I was sitting there in New York City figuring, well, what's important to me? And I figured out the most important thing to me is this, and you. And again, that sounds a bit much, but it's true. Because I've averaged over 100 shows a year for 31 years. This is what I do. This is not something I'm doing until I, get my head together and go to college. This is it. And you are my big deal. You are my great obsession. My affection for you, you have no idea. It's a little weird, so I won't discuss it. My affection for you, which is ridiculous, it's obscured and eclipsed by my great fear of you. And I don't exactly fear you storming the barricades and like the Bastille and taking me out. I mean, please don't. I fear disappointing you more than anything. And so that's what drives me forward, to never let you down as best as I can. And so I was sitting there in New York thinking about all of this. And also was thinking about geographically where I was. New York City. If you've never been to America, I hope you go. I think you're going to like Americans. We're a good bunch. We're truly, most of the time, we're good. In my opinion, just my opinion, we're not accounted to well enough by our media, and we're not served well enough by our apparently transparent democracy. It is, in fact, a corporatocracy. And so things are going to get better. Things are going to get better because America is full of people like you, people like me, scientifically inclined and moving forward. And so things are getting better, and we got a lot of work to do. In any case, New York City is a city you really have to go to before you die. I'm not telling you what to do. I'm just hoping that you go. I think you'd love New York. I think you'd like New Yorkers. They're a great bunch. It's like the biggest Martin Scorsese casting call has just let out, and that's New York City. They take up a lot of room, but they're your bestest pal in a pinch. Anyway, if you were an independent band back in the 1850s, like I was, New York City was a place you could play, pack the place, and make enough sandwich money for the next week of your life. Now, back in the long time ago, the first books ever written about rock and roll were etched in huge stone tablets or like scrawled on by ancient scribes of pharaohs on papyrus reed. It is in these ancient books you'll find history of a band called Black Flag.
Yeah!
Some of our fans at Black Flag shows, George Washington, Thomas Jefferson came to these shows. This is back in the day when bands would tour with a horse-drawn cart. Amplification equipment was coal-powered, and often the smoke would kill 500 to 500 of the people up front. There would be doctors on the side with leeches for the face if you had a cold. But this is a long time ago. Bloodletting, no problem. And the occasional execution. Anyway. That's back in the day, and many bands like us and REM and all these other bands, we would tour in vans, be covered with crab lice and fleas, and you'd sleep on some punk rocker's floor, and the next morning you'd wake up your body tingling with the crabs from the last band who stayed on that floor. And as some of you know, crabs are interested in seemingly one part of your body, one general area, and they're able to find said area with incredible exactitude. Like they'll go over miles of skin to get to the bits. And I wake up in the morning with that area of my body, not wanting to be too crass, alive. And you reach in there, because you can feel one as it's making this mad dash across the bottom of your scrotum. And like, grab him. And I'm like, from where are you from? And you know, he's a burly crap, with tattoos, attitude. And I said, where are you from? I lived on the ass of Michael Stipe for 5 weeks. And so, that's what I was there for. You got value. And so New York City was a band that we all played. We all played there very often because you put a bunch of people in the place and make some money and keep eating for another week. And so Black Flag played New York all the time. And there was never one time we played in New York where I did not get a life lesson. Wasn't always a great lesson, but it was one of those things that, you know, made me smarter than I was the day before. And so one time in like 1880-something, we're playing in New York City in a place called the Irving Plaza. And the place is going nuts, like 1,000, people going crazy. And I got my eyes closed, I'm yelling away, and I feel something has arrived on stage. Something has landed. And I figure it's his Youth Man. Youth Man has jumped up on stage so Youth Man can jump off stage into the crowd. Youth Man was rarely satisfied with getting on stage and jumping off at the point where Youth Man got on. Youth Man always wanted to run and jump off stage next to me. What my attractive qualities were, maybe I'm the cute one in the band, I have no idea. But Youth Man would run to me and smack me behind the head and jump off, or put me in a headlock for his friends, or like elbow me, or do something and then jump off. It was funny, and I was the figure of fun. It wasn't so great. And so I got my eyes closed. Something has arrived. And I feel on the dance, on the stage, something is making progress towards me. Some biped is running towards me. Like many of you would do, I open my eyes and look around to see what is coming my way. In time to take a young man's cranium right into mine. He is running at Olympic sprinter speed. I am the stationary object. You see how this plays out. This kid jumps off stage, so says the eyewitnesses, into history. Me, I hit the deck in a pool of my own perspiration, so said eyewitnesses, their elbows on the stage. For about 15 seconds, I did this. I was knocked out. And I got up, with I've been knocked out deja vu. Because unfortunately for me, it was not the first time I've been knocked out, and sadly, it was not the last time I was going to be knocked out on stage by Youth Man. And so I got up with I've been knocked out deja vu. And oh yeah, all my old friends, nausea, can't find my balance, have to remind myself to breathe, because after you've been knocked out, your brain is like, ah! And I stand up, and everyone below me's laughing. They think it's hilarious. But the audio sounds weird, and the visual looks weird. It's like, he got knocked out. And I'm trying to keep breathing. I put my hand to my head. There's this huge thing coming out of my forehead. And I realize I'm probably in some trouble. And so I look to my right, and there's Greg Ginn, the Black Flag, the guitar player, and he's waving at me. And I stupidly think he's waving out of concern. So I take the bait, and I wave back. I go, I think I'm okay. I think I got knocked out. How stupid was I? Greg is not really concerned about what had happened to me. He's only getting my attention so he can point to the next song on the set list. And for a band that loved lawlessness so much, we had a lot of rules. And one of the rules was, you will not stop playing. But people in the audience are spontaneously combusting. Keep playing. The roof is blown open and unicorns are orbiting the sky. Keep playing. And the only thing that could stop one of our shows was law enforcement. And they'd come onto the stage, take the microphone from me, this show is over. And drop the mic, and the gig was over. But if it's just a situation where the singer's been knocked out, suck it up, Caroline! We've got songs to play! And so Greg just goes like, he points to the next song, keep playing. I'm like, okay, you got it, no problem. And so for the rest of the show, I just like free associated. I had no idea what songs they were playing. Like, and I'm riding this wave of disorientation and nausea. And I'm like, I think people dug it. They're like, wow, he's taking punk rock to a whole new level. This is just another night. It's a like and so we finish the show somehow, and we go on our way, and we come back to New York a few months later, and now we're playing in even a bigger box in Manhattan, New York. It's like 1,400 people below us in this tornado of testosterone. People are going nuts. And partway through the show, this huge man jumps up on stage, thick neck, black military haircut, black army boots, like a linebacker, big fella, jumps up on stage and starts taking these laps around the stage like he's at the end of a bolo. I jump up on the drum riser. My bandmates fall back to their gear to give Big Boy room to move. So and he vaults off stage, arms outstretched like some kind of man Hindenburg. And he goes forward a few meters, and then gravity gets a hold of him, and he starts dropping straight down, picking up speed and velocity, feet per second, upon a densely packed dance floor below. Now, the concert goers underneath the falling man collectively denote the ambient light over their head slightly differentiate because it's being somewhat eclipsed by the man's form as he falls. Now, they know from previous concert experience and a basic and rudimentary understanding of basic physics that they do not have time to look up and assess the incoming object for speed, density, mass, velocity, or potential lethality. All they have time to do is evacuate the general area with astonishing speed and efficiency that I must say was completely inspiring. That is to say, when you see several hundred nonconformist ne'er-do-wells uniting together in a single purpose, and on this night it was to migrate from that part of the venue to another part of the venue in about half a nanosecond. The human blur of youth below me was astounding. Gone! They're gone! And in their wake, there's a semicircular island of naked dance floor, punctuated by one mere mortal girl. And she's looking around, and the look on her face is like, hey! And And the big bastard lands on the girl with the entirety of his body weight. And everyone stops breathing because they're looking at the ground and there's a man, arms and legs spread, the trench coat spread like wings. He could be dead. He doesn't seem to be moving. Where is the female? There is no visual sign of her at all. Well, from her non-appearance, we can derive a couple of conclusions as to what may have happened. One, like when you take a wet bar of soap and hold it in your wet hand and squeeze, perhaps, like when the bar is ejected, perhaps she was shot through the air, and she's landed ninja-like on the grill of the balcony. How did I get here? Maybe, just maybe, she has been atomized. She's been turned into a girly aerosol by the sheer weight and velocity of the man dropping on top of her. And she now covers all of the concert goers in this patina of blood and bone and brain. No one knows, because no one will touch the guy. Because apparently he's dead. You touch him. I don't want to touch him. So finally, some people go over, and they roll the big bastard on his back. The girl's been underneath him the whole time, and she's looking up at the ceiling. Her eyes are not focused. Her mouth is open, and she's gaping spasmodically and inhaling air. The reptilian brain has kicked in. This is involuntary action. She is basically dead, and her body's just like paying the rent. And so I'm like, two dead people. And so finally some people go up to the girl who seems to be looking at nothing, gaping with her mouth, and they pick her up and they shake her. And she regains her own balance, her eyes focus, and you see her looking around, and I know that face. She's got, I've been knocked out. What's going on? And she looks around and she's trying to orientate herself to her situation. She goes, okay, that's a band. This is a venue. I seem to be the center of attention. There's a ring of people around me. I seem to be okay, and I'm not in any real degree of trouble. And so she looks at everyone and waves. And like she just got thrown off the back of a massive Bronco bull at one of those redneck events, and she survived. I go, hurrah, praise the Lord. It's why idiots go see NASCAR, okay? They don't want to see the cars go around. They want to see the cars crash. And they want to see the men, get out of the burning metal. Go, like, oh, hell yeah, God damn it! Survivor. So she waves at the crowd, and the crowd roars in approval. Yeah! And she's like, thanks, I guess. She's happy with the crowd and disappears. And the big bastard, he gets up and waves, and everyone goes, you not so much. And he goes to the crowd, and he's gone. And so the dance floor refills with people, and they're all looking at us, and we're looking at them, and they kind of turned on us en masse and got very, very angry, and they said, keep playing! Okay, of course. 1, 2, 3. Hey. So, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. It's going to be a long drive. We're going to get there right in time to load in and do 2 shows. We're young, we can handle it. And so we're on the road at 4 a.m. getting out of New York City, and I can't sleep because I'm thinking about that girl, and I'm thinking about how we young people are bomb-proof. There's nothing you can do to us. Evidence? You can take a mere mortal girl and drop a man the size of a laundry truck on top of her, and she'll get him, go, and walk away. I was like, damn, aren't we impressive, we young people? And so we come back to New York a few months later, and we're playing some other big anonymous box in Manhattan, New York City, and it's sound check time. There's no one in the venue but band and crew, and we're on stage. It's like 4 in the afternoon, and we're getting the sound check together, and a girl comes in alone, and she walks across the dance floor. She comes right up to the stage, right about there, and she looks up at me. She says, hello? I said, hello? She said, do you remember me? I said, no, I'm sorry, where do I remember you from? She said, remember the last time you guys played in New York City? A big guy, I'm like, oh, are you the girl that landed on by the big bastard? She said, I am. I said, damn, when he landed on me, my teeth hurt. I was like, oh, she's dead. And then when you got up, I thought it was fantastic. I'm so glad you're okay. And she said, well, thanks, but I'm not exactly okay. And she points to one of her eyes, and she said, this is a glass eye. He knocked my eye out. And so she lost an eye at our show. and understandably, everyone in the band stops what they're doing. No one in the band will talk to her except me.
You're the singer, you talk to her.
I talked to her, and I honestly, this was a while ago, I don't remember what I said. I am sure "I'm sorry" was part of what I said. It would be reflexive and instinctive in that someone lost an eye at your show. Are you sorry? Well, absolutely. Because "I'm sorry" put an eyeball back in the head? No, it doesn't. Well, putting you on the guest list is rude at that point. It's like if you came up to me and said, "Wolverines ate my whole family," and if I replied with, "Oh, I'm sorry for your loss." Breath mint? Are you kidding? And so I don't really remember what I said except, "I'm so sorry." And I'll never forget what she said. It's like locked like a soundbite in my head. She looked up at me and she said, "Don't worry about it. It's cool. I'll see you tonight." Without a trace of anger, she turned around and walked out. We all looked at each other like, "It's cool? Like, how can that be cool? You lost one half of your sight at our show and it's cool?" I mean, it was mind-blowing. And so we finished the sound check. All right, what were we doing? The thing about, hey, okay, 1, 2. It sucked. And so for the rest of the afternoon, I just walked around New York getting ready for the show, thinking about the girl who lost her eye at our show. And I'm thinking, well, am I supposed to issue a safety instruction at the gig that night? "All right, everyone, I want you to be careful out there. I don't want everyone to lose an eyeball. Like last time." What? Nothing. So it is impossible to defend the guy who jumped off stage, but it could be that he's not the worst guy, in that he could be a good guy in a bad situation. In that, I bet when he came into the venue that night, he was not thinking, "I'm hunting for eyeball." And when he jumped off stage, he wasn't aiming, "Not you, you!" He was going, "Ugh," and jumped off stage, and there happened to be a girl who didn't get the memo of, "Run!" And she got landed on. And I bet if you told him what he had done, he wouldn't say, "So, punk rock." He'd probably be, fairly mortified as to what he had done. Now, imagine that was you for one awful moment, that you had landed on the girl and knocked her eye out, and someone told you. And you'd be spending the rest of your life walking around with that. Now, we humans are very good at compartmentalization, in that we can take trauma or something from our past and put it away and lock it up, hoping never have to deal with it again. And some of us are very damn good at that. But every once in a while, that devil you think you got locked up, it's not locked up. And when the light in the room is right or a smell comes through the air, you go back to that moment, and maybe this guy, if he found out for years at a time, he could forget that he's the guy who robbed a girl of one half of her sight. But every once in a while, it would come back. What if this guy became a father? What if he has like a 15 or 16-year-old son, and the son comes into his den that day and says, "Dad, I'm a young bastard about to go out into the world. Teach me how not to be a schmuck." "All right, son, don't do what I did." What did you do, Dad?" "Son, in the 1850s, as a young man, I jumped off stage at a punk rock show. I landed on a mere mortal girl and knocked an eyeball out of her head, and she now walks this mortal coil with one eyeball gone because of what I did." "Dad, you're a douche." "Son, I'm a mega douche. And what I did robs me of my sleep. It ruins my meals. Son, you never want to rob someone of their life and their liberty and their pursuit of happiness for some stupid thing you think you're supposed to do. Look before you leap. I'm your father. I have spoken. Get out." And so I learned a lot of lessons in those days, and something, I don't know whether this will make any sense, but in that I don't know if I can be clear enough about it. In those days, I was living on a very low level, and that I was seeing America right in the teeth. And around 1984, I noticed that a lot of my friends were dying. Heroin, crystal methamphetamine, suicide, madness. And I noticed more cops at our shows, more uniformed cops, more undercover cops, more religious groups are protesting our shows, more government people are coming to our shows, doing sound bites for local news, like, "This Black Flag band is the scourge of the universe." Cops would come up to me, recognizing me, calling me names in Los Angeles, completely terrifying. And then I also noticed, and I don't know if I can make this clear, I noticed a certain kind of American, young, stupid, and violent, who would look at you and go, "What's up, faggot?" Wanting you to do something. They were getting rich, and I noticed their clothes are getting better, and their cars are nice, and their girlfriends have large breastises, and their attitudes like, "What are you looking at, bitch?" And I go, wow, The rich people are getting hostile. The cops are getting plentiful. And I reckon guys like me are in the crosshairs because they all seem to hate my guts. Years later, they called it Reaganism. I understood it just on being on the street and seeing it right in front of my face. And you could not tell me I wasn't seeing and experiencing what I was seeing and experiencing. It was what it was. I found out later I was right. And I started to watch my country fall apart and these idiots get rich. And as soon as they got some power, they were some of the meanest, most racist, most homophobic, diabolical, war-loving idiots ever that this country, my country, has ever produced. Then I realized guys like me, they want me gone. And that's when I realized I'm going to have to survive my country. Not necessarily live in it, but live in spite of it. And that's when I went from becoming an American to an Americanist. And I'm not putting the place down. It's given me quite a bit. I'm just saying it's a place you got to watch your ass. And I'm not trying to put any of you down, but it's the reason I don't drink. It's the reason I don't smoke. It's the reason I don't do any drugs. And I'm not saying you shouldn't. I'm just saying, but I want you to do whatever you want to do. I'm just telling you about, from my end, I don't do any of that stuff, not because I'm sure it's a lot of fun, but I don't want to be arrestable. I don't want to not be sharp. I don't want to not be able to look a cop in the eye and go, no, I'm not on anything. Find a new way to bust me because I'm not high. I'm right here with you right now. And you basically, this might make sense. I'm too pissed off to get high, okay? So, as you know, some agencies in my country, they want me, the American, to be afraid of the rest of the world and hate it and one day bomb it. Like Iran. Don't go to Iran, they hate freedom. That's what the old president used to say. The freedom haters. They hate your freedom. They are proliferators. And he had obviously no idea what he's talking about. And so every time my old president would say, don't go to this country, they hate your freedom, I'd say, one please. And I'd go to that country. I went to Iran, and I spent quite a bit of time there. And I walked the streets of Tehran like I've walked the streets of Islamabad, like I've walked the streets of Cairo and Beirut and Pyongyang, North Korea, and all these places that I've been to. And whenever I encounter people, like in Iran, people would come up, men would speak to me, not women, unless I was properly introduced. But men would come up and go, where are you from? I said, America. They go, oh, wow, okay. Who are you here with? I said, I'm here alone. And like, there's a moment like, wow, I'm impressed. And the guy would say, well, what are you doing here? And I said to him, what I say to every single person I meet all over the world when I'm in some interesting land, I said, what am I doing here? I'm here to meet you. My name's Henry. What's happening? And then never failed to break the ice. And he goes, oh, well, hi, my name is, insert name here, we shake hands, this is my nephew, let's talk about the weather. And all of a sudden you're having a really great time. And then you get invited to dinner, and you eat this great meal. And then they take you out for ice cream, saffron ice cream. It's the best ice cream I've ever had. And so I get back to America. I get taken into rooms now in American international airports, and my passport is so sexy they can't stand it. And I have American law officials around me holding my passport like it's incriminating evidence. They think they're intimidating me. And I'm not trying to bum you out or be crass, but when government officials attempt to intimidate me, the blood in my body goes to one central area, and it's a very warm sensation. It's a turn on the, oh, you think you're scaring me? Passport in front of me. So why'd you go to Syria? Because I'm curious. Why are you curious? Why are you curious and I'm curious? We've got our eyes on you here. And so, all over the world I bounce as often as possible. And I spent quite a bit of time in southern Sudan and northern Uganda. And I met a lot of young kids who were abducted by the Lord's Resistance Army. Joseph Kony, you know him, not personally, obviously. But I met a lot of these traumatized kids, and I meet a lot of people in these places. And wherever I go, wherever parts of Africa or the Middle East or Southeast Asia or Central Asia, wherever it is I go, I meet as many people as I can. And I always ask them the same question. I always say, what do you want? Like if you got anything you want, what do you want? And there's a beautiful commonality to the similarities of what people say. They don't say, I want 4 loose girlfriends and a fleet of Lamborghinis. They never say that. they say, like in places like southern Sudan that have been dealing with a multi-decade war, in parts of Africa I've been to that are very hard put, parts of Southeast Asia like the old Burma before the new president Thein Sein came in, hopefully making it better for them. I've asked them, what do you want? And the replies were always basically the same. I want water that won't kill me. I want peace for my children. I want a roof that doesn't leak. I want some food. I want a life without war. And I said, that's it? What about the hot girlfriends and the Lamborghinis? I don't need a car, man. I just want my kids to be safe. I want some water that won't give them diarrhea and kill them. And I just want to get by. Basically, a day without fear and a fistful of 50s is all anyone's looking for. They just want a chance to eke out in existence. And this is what I was just in Haiti recently, and I went to Haiti on a solo improv punk rock mission. I went there by myself with a fistful of American dollars, and I met a guy with a car in Port-au-Prince. He works at a car company, and so I rented him in his car. The guy's name is Jimmy. So Jimmy says, hello, Mr. Rollins. He says, call me Henry. Hello, Mr. Henry. I said, just call me Henry. I'm an American psycho. We can be cool. And so we were driving around Port-au-Prince, and as you know, several months ago, big earthquake, a lot of people relocated. And so he said, so Henry, what do you want to do in your time with me in the car? So I want to go to 10 cities. I want to meet people in 10 cities, these relocated people. And he said, that's not safe for you to go into. I said, pal, I go into unsafe places all the time. Like my own neighborhood. I live in Los Angeles. Anyway, so he said, well, I'll get you next to a 10 city. You can look into it and see what. So we pull up to a 10 city. It's below us. We're on a high road. And we look down. There's improvised housing. And there's a bunch of men hanging around. I pull up my camera. I take some photos. The men below look up, very, very angry at me. And then they start scolding me. And one guy, they're yelling at me in Creole. And one guy's yelling at me in English. And he said, don't make fun of us. I said, I'm not making fun of you, man. I'm just taking a photo. He said, don't make fun of me. I need you. That was one of the weirdest things. Like, don't make fun of me. I need you. I said, no problem. And I went running down the street into the tent city with Jimmy running at me like, no! So I go in there and I'm surrounded by these angry men. And now the spit is flying and the index fingers are shaking in my face. They are furious that I took photos of them. And I'm not a tough guy. I'm not brave, and I'm not looking for a fight with you or anybody. But I am not afraid of people. In that, I think we can come to a peaceful resolution with conflict by negotiation and comedy. And so, and again, I'm not trying to impress you like I'm some tough guy, because really I'm not. But these guys are yelling at me, and they're very angry. And so I went, okay, you're angry. I understand. My name's Henry. What's happening? And I stick my hand out. I'm like, I'm Leon. This is Victor. And they cool out a little bit. And then Jimmy runs up and he translates and says, oh, yeah, sorry for my American friend. He's a little crazy. And everyone cools out. And I said, Jimmy, translate this to these guys. I said, fellas, look, I'm not an NGO. I cannot bring you 150,000 gallons of water today like I know you need. But I got a car and my pal Jimmy, we can help a little. Can you tell me something that I can do for you? And let me do it for you. And one guy spoke English. He went, yeah, get us some soccer balls for all these kids around. I said, soccer balls, great, I got it. What else? Some soap. I went, great, soap, washing up, a little bit of self-esteem, a little bit of hygiene. I got it. I said, soap and soccer balls. And I said, you know what? Forget the soap. Just get some soccer balls. I go, no, I got it. Soap and soccer balls. We'll be back in a few hours. And they basically said, bullshit. And I said, you guys don't know me. I'm a single-minded dude. Once I get an idea, that is the idea. I said, we'll see you in a few hours. And I go walking out of the tent city with Jimmy just still like, hey! He comes running at me like, we're going to get soap and soccer balls? I said, yeah. He said, why? I said, because I promised, Jimmy. And so we go to the money changers. These guys exchange money. I got a local with me. We get a good exchange rate. We take all this Haitian money. We go into a supermarket. We buy about $50 of 8-cent bars of soap and every soccer ball they had. And we come in like the Santa Claus brothers with these ridiculous bags of soap. We smell like aloe vera from here to Indiana. And we walk into the tent city. The same guys are standing around. They come running up. They say, you came back. I said, man, I told you we would. Here's the soap, here's the soccer balls, do some distribution. Hands were shook, thanks were thanked, and we left. And as we're walking out, Jimmy says to me, that was really cool. I said, you like that? He said, I love that. I said, let's do it again. And that's when the Santa Claus twins were born. And so we spent the rest of the week, we'd get together every morning at the hotel. He said, same thing. I said, same thing. And we ended up, all these supermarkets, they knew it. Like, oh, there's these maniacs who buy all of our soap. And so we expanded our thing from small balls for the small kids, medium-sized balls for like the 7-year-olds, and soccer balls for the bigger kids who got enough meat on their bones to kick them around. And we bought a ton of soap. And we go to different tent cities and go, who's your main guy? Because they all have the alpha male who kind of runs the place. He comes up and he said, soap and soccer balls. The guy would line everyone up, hand them all out, and turn them loose. And we do this every single day for a solid week. And it doesn't save the world, but it's, at least it's not doing nothing. And at one point, we were going to a few different orphanages. I'd meet the people who run it. I'd give them some money. And the kids see me, this pasty white, not doing very well in the heat guy with ancient and stupid tattoos all over him. So I'm basically this weird white guy covered in the Sunday funnies. And they see me as a human play toy that they have not played with yet. And so they come running up, beautiful little children, arms outstretched, huge smiles on their faces. I'm not the kind of person who sees a gorgeous little kid smiling at me and says, get away from me! So I stupidly pick up child one. Whoa! And then I see that I've bought myself 3 hours of manual labor as these children have lined up over the curvature of the earth and disappeared over the horizon in a perfectly straight line. And I realize I've just bought myself 3 hours of manual labor that is going to ruin the lumbar region of my back in 108-degree weather with massive humidity. But I'm pretty strong, so I hang in there pretty well. And by kid 50, I'm like getting worn out just a little bit. That's all I got. Don't be just, come on. By kid 100, I just hate kids. I hate all children. I hate all children. What the hell do you want? Wait a minute. I've seen you before. You just get back in line. And I find out they're just getting back in line. What do you expect them to do? They're just kids and they want to have fun. So I picked up these kids until the nuns finally came up to me and they said, Henry, if you pick up one more kid, we're afraid you're going to die. So you have to go because we can't have you dying on our property. Now get out of here. Now it's kind of like James Brown at the end of one of his concerts where James doesn't want to leave and the guy comes out on stage with the cape and they throw the cape over James and go, come on, Godfather, it's time to go. And he says, no, I haven't said, ha! James just said, ha! 2 hours ago, we got to get to Macon. And so in that week, we bought a lot of soap, we bought a lot of soccer balls, and we played with a lot of kids and hopefully did a little bit of good. And the biggest irony of being in Port-au-Prince, Haiti for a week was about an hour and 40 minutes by air out of Port-au-Prince. You land in Miami, Florida. There are beautiful condominiums, beautifully sculpted women with breasts that defy gravity and noses that are thin and straight and foreheads that are not in any way damaged by lines or aging or sheer mortality. And 100 minutes later through air, you go to a place that reeks of human fecal matter and incredible hopelessness. And I don't know what the answer is to that, but I know the answer isn't inactivity. And this sounds a little much, but you are the reason why I sleep well at night. You are the reason why I remain brutally and ruggedly optimistic no matter what happens anywhere in the world. Genocide, flood, famine. I remain optimistic because I know the good outweighs the bad. The good people outweigh the bastards in the world. And I really think that that group, the larger group, that is you and that is me. And so because of you, I remain very confident in our future because I know that you're on the case. I know you read. I know you're not homophobic. I know you're not racist. I know that you're not misogynist. I know you're scientifically inclined. And I know you're not going to take no for an answer. And I know that you do not fear authority. You only question it and keep it in check. And it is for those reasons that we are going to be okay. Why? Because you're here. So take care of yourselves until next time. Good night. Thank you.